Stranger Things has a huge cast, and with season 4, they add even more characters. There's 22 here. 22! So you know what that means. It's time to rank them. That's right, with spoilers, so beware. Please note that this is for season 4 specifically, the rankings, and how the characters are used in this season. So if your favorite's a little lower down than you'd like, maybe that's just a hard truth about how they're handled in season 4. And also, they have to have a meaningful impact on the story also to qualify. So some characters that were a little bit more involved before, like, Mike and Nancy's mom, she's not factoring in this season. So as always, I look forward to hearing your own rankings down below. But with 22, I'd be cool if you just wanted to put a top 5 or 10 in the comments down below. But I'm going for it. I'm ranking all 22, baby. But I will start with number 1. MVP. I'm very curious to who we're all going to put as number 1, but I'm going with 1, aka Vecna, played by Jamie Campbell Bower. What a great character. A really great hero and story needs a really great villain. And I think 11 finally gets hers, and Stranger Things finally gets its, with the intro of 1/Vecna. From his hair, which starts out oh so sweet, but then, although very, very cool, and then changes to like rock star when his powers are unleashed, to the creepy friend angle, the bond that he has with 11. So there is like a kind of a friendship there, but also a guilt that she fell for it. The twist of him being Victor Creel's son, that was an amazing twist, which I talk about in my spoiler review. The VFX with him and his kills are incredible, making him very dangerous, but also a very competent villain. Oh, isn't that great? When you have a competent villain, that's what makes him the scariest indeed. So hands down, in my opinion, number 1, Vecna. All right, 2, you're gonna be surprised with this as well. Max, played by Sadie Sink. I think she just really does a wonderful job this season. I hope she gets some more work. I think all my top people, I hope they get other work. Everybody on this show, but this is some great stuff. This is a great calling card for their abilities as an actor. Max, here's the thing. A lot about acting is reacting, and I think Sadie Sink does a wonderful job reacting throughout, especially the early episodes of this season. She's got great striking eyebrows, and you really feel a connection with her. You know what she's like in this season? A final girl in a horror movie, and she does a great job. And I love that she's saved by a song, and that her headphones have to be placed on her head, and that she has to walk around after that all the time with these headphones at the ready, listening to a pretty darn good song. I love that. What would your song be that would pull you back? Something that I heard a lot, that my parents would play for me was We Built This City. So I'm thinking maybe that would be it. I'm not sure. It's not necessarily your favorite song, but what has a strong emotional reaction? Oh, that's so great. Oh, it's great stuff. All right, 3. This is also surprising to me. Dustin, played by Gaten Matarazzo. He is, I think, in large part Stranger Things. I think he really represents the whole franchise, from his love of Dungeons and Dragons to movies. And he has, as I said in my spoiler review, some pretty strong Dan Aykroyd vibes. He can explain a lot of stuff. He knows a lot of the science. He knows a lot of the fan stuff. He's really the Stranger Things encyclopedia that you go to. I thought some of his interactions with Steve were very funny too, where he's like, aren't you ever prepared yourself? That was great. And he proves that it's better to be comedic relief than the leading man, because Mike got benched this season because the leading lady didn't need him. That's crazy. All right, number 4, speaking of 11, played by, of course, Millie Bobby Brown. She's a little lower than you might expect. She also, I think, is Stranger Things. But I think that she's lower this season because she spends a lot of it getting information, and I think she's taking a lot in part 1, and I think she's going to really, hopefully, capitalize on that in part 2 and, have a much more proactive role. But I think that Millie Bobby Brown does a really nice job here of not quite fitting in due to her upbringing at school. I think she really sells that. I think the struggle between the monster she thinks she is versus the superhero she wants to be, I think that's really compelling and rarely explored with characters who have superpowers, which is crazy because there's been so many stories at this point about that. And I like seeing her short hair back. I think that's the look that really sells 11. And her love of waffles hasn't gone away either. I love it. All right, number 5, Harbour, played by David Harbour. I missed the humor of this role, because, but he doesn't have a lot to laugh about in his current situation. And I love his great new look. He looks fantastic. I thought the monologue was interesting. I didn't appreciate it, as I said in my spoiler review when I first heard it, but I think making the connection that both he and Eleven were betrayed by the government and experimented on, him with Agent Orange, her with the Hawkins study, I thought that created another bond between the two of them, which was very nice. And I loved, he has a great thing where he's the only prisoner who knows how to take on the Demogorgon. So they were able to give him some really great scenes. Also, who doesn't love a prison escape? It was really good. He had really good stuff this season. Number 6, Murray, played by Brett Gelman. I love Murray. He's actually, almost every storyline has its own Dustin, and he's the Dustin of the adult stories. He's great, but I'd say instead of channeling Dan Aykroyd, he's channeling Richard Dreyfuss, who I'm a big fan of. So maybe that's one of the reasons I like Murray so much. I love that his karate actually works, both on the plane and in the prison. And I love that he's always open to crazy plans. And he too, just like Dustin, knows a lot of stuff. He's a great person to go to in these situations. But even more so than Dustin, and maybe Dustin's a child, so he doesn't have the same capability, but Murray always says yes. When Joyce or Hopper are like, we want to do this, Murray might complain at first, but at the end of the day, he's like, all right, let's do it. And I'm going to help you do it. And I'm going to help you make sure it succeeds. And that makes him a great character for this type of show. So I love Murray. He's so great. All right, number 7, Eddie, one of the new cast members, played by Joseph Quinn, who's British, by the way. These Brits are so good at their American accents. He's a fantastic new addition to this show. He's edgy but sweet. I loved his interactions with Chrissy, with the drug deal. I thought that was really, maybe in another life or another world, maybe they would have been a couple. And I think that's kind of what maybe he was hoping a little bit for, that kind of connection when he brought her back to the RV, which makes her death all the more tragic. And him being blamed for it. And him being new to the Upside Down, of course, is great because it brings in new viewers. He can, they can relate to him, and he's the character that needs all the answers that they need. He's like the Robin of this season. The stakes a little bit higher because, of course, he's been accused of murder. But yeah, he's great. And he also kind of replaced Jonathan because they have another older guy to balance out Steve, an older character. All right, 8. Martin Brenner, played by Matthew Modine. Welcome back, Dr. Brenner. That wig is nuts. I love it. Sometimes I don't even bother to hide that's a wig. He really likes to tease his hair in the mornings. I love it. But, I think Matthew Modine brings some much-needed star power along with Winona Ryder and Paul Reiser to the show. And I like the idea of him being Eleven's papa. She's like, Papa? I think it's great. The good and the bad. Because, he saw the tape. He could have told her she didn't kill everybody. But he's like, he really is a Dr. Frankenstein. And I think he always means well, but, I think he means well for himself and for science. He's a little Dr. Strange-like, where, Dr. Strange lately has been saying, you got to make the sacrifice for the greater good. And I think that's how Dr. Brenner feels, too. He's not like Hopper, ride or die. Dr. Frankenstein's like, you do what you feel you should do best, and I'm going to take notes on it. But he's great. I think that shock of white hair is fantastic. I love it. 9, another new character, Argyle, played by Eduardo Franco, steals every scene he's in. And he's been stealing scenes in Hollywood for a while now, but not at this level. He finally was able to level up and shine he does. I loved when he answered the phone at the pizza parlor and he had the pineapple cell with the rhyme, right? That was great. And then I think that, again, he's the Dustin of this storyline. And interestingly, he falls for Dustin's girlfriend's sister. So I think that's interesting. Maybe there's someone from Murray at that house too. Maybe they have a much older sister. All right, 10, or an aunt. All right, 10, Victor Creel played the older version by Robert Englund and then the younger version by Kevin L. Johnson, who Ozark fans know very well. This was a waste of Robert Englund. So I almost didn't include him in the 22 characters, by the way. But I was like, how can I leave out Robert Englund in this list? And he's smack in the middle of it because it's Robert Englund. And he was part of a really great twist. And those sequences were well filmed and interesting. Although, of course, those featured Kevin L. Johnson. And that was inspired casting because he looks a lot like Robert Englund. They really sold that they were the same person. So while I thought this was kind of a waste of Englund, the Freddy Krueger Nightmare on Elm Street connection to Vecna makes it iconic nevertheless. All All right, then 11, Nancy, played by Natalia Dyer. She really is the Lois Lane of this franchise, and she does a great job, but she's still in high school. I'm surprised she's still in high school. I thought she was graduating last season, in season 3, and so I'm like, you're still in high school? But she is. I think she's a little aggressive for a high school reporter. I'm like, you don't have that kind of circulation, Nancy. I wish she was back working at the local paper as an intern. Even though they were all a bunch of sexist jerks over there, maybe she could have worked for another paper, right? Or something else. Or maybe like an independent paper in town or town over. I just feel like demoting her to a high school paper just makes her reporting seem less like it's going to reach people. But I do like her sequences. Who doesn't love researching a good story from the library to going to the mental hospital? I thought that was great. And she did solve it almost, come very close. So she's a very good reporter, very clever and resourceful. Which why it's just interesting because number 12 is Joyce, played by Winona Ryder. Now, Winona Ryder has a difficult time in her storyline because it's very hard to compete with Murray. Murray's bigger than life, and so Winona Ryder, I think, has a hard time standing out next to him, unfortunately. She's a very good detective too, though. In season 1, of course, she's the one who figured out how to communicate with Will with the Christmas lights. She helps find out where Hopper is with the package and believes that there's something there, a mystery to discover. In fact, making this list, I realized she's a lot like Nancy. And Jonathan is drawn to someone like his mother. People are often drawn to people like their parents, whatever parent is the most influential on their life. And I think that's very interesting. So isn't that cool? So I think that's neat. I'm really rooting for Joyce and Hopper, by the way. I hope it works out for those two as well. Number 13, another new character, Mason Dye playing Jason. A good villain in that he's complex. I think that he is not so much an evil person, but he's a product of his community and society. And a problem that still exists today, that he's not willing to ask bigger questions, that his worldview is too small. And he believes the first thing that's told to him too much without entertaining the possibility that it might be wrong, not necessarily wrong, but he's just too close-minded. But a lot of people are like that, so I think it's good to see it depicted here. And also, his girlfriend was horribly murdered, and he genuinely seems to be very upset about it. I thought that was very moving when he went into the woods to scream like that. I think she was pregnant, quite frankly. I think that makes her death even more horrible. I'm surprised the show didn't make that clear. Maybe they're waiting to reveal that to give Jason another layer a little bit later on. What are they waiting for, though? We're 7 episodes into the season. I do wonder if he knew that she was pregnant, perhaps. Maybe she wasn't, but that's why I felt she was throwing up in the bathroom, right? I mean, did you get that feeling? But I mean, I can understand where he's coming from. I can understand the pain that he's in, and I hope he has a teachable moment. That's the kind of character you want to see, realize that they're in the wrong and switch to the other side. I mean, Steve Harrington started out as this guy at the beginning of the show, which was why the evolution of the Steve Harrington character was so incredible and why he's such a fan favorite. We'll get to Steve. He's coming up. All right, but number 14 first is Robin, played by Maya Hawke. And whenever I watch her, I'm like, you really are the daughter of Uma Thurman and Ethan Hawke because you're just as charismatic and talented. And a little bit off kilter, which is what makes both those actors so interesting. I like that she has this flirtation with the fellow band girl, who I think that might work. I'd be like, you should go for it, Robin. I think they seem like a great couple. I think she's also a very good friend to Steve, that she makes it clear to Nancy that they have a platonic friendship, but also Steve's very careful not to out Robin before she's ready to Nancy, because they could make it even clearer that there isn't going on anything between Steve and Robin, but Steve very respectfully doesn't do that. I thought she was a bit overboard in the Penhurst Mental Hospital with that speech. Maybe it speaks to how people perceive women and the hystericalness of their nature, and that's why that speech was okay. But still, she was a lot of fun, and I liked her. I still like having her around this season, although I feel that Nancy does a lot of the investigating, and so Robin's stuck assisting her. And again, as I said, Eddie is the new person to find out about the Upside Down, so that takes away some of what Robin's there for. Then number 15, Steve Harrington, played by Joe Keery. Still, fantastic hair. A lot of gray hair on this show. He's up there with One and Dr. Brenner. But, they should do like a hair commercial tie-in for this show. But Steve doesn't know what to do with himself, and therefore the show doesn't know what to do with Steve, which is a problem for the character. He's stuck in Hawkins. He's stuck in life. He decided not to go on to college. He's kind of like in the upside down of life. I wish they would explore that more. And when he was attacked in the Upside Down, as I said in my spoiler review, I feel there's another shoe waiting to drop there, especially with all the hints Robin had about rabies. I think, again, they should keep an eye on Steve. And I'm very worried he's not going to make it out of this season alive. I just have that feeling. We'll see. Although, again, I kind of feel like maybe it's his time to go if he gets a good, iconic death. Number 16, Dimitri, played by Tom Wlaschiha. He's, of course, from Game of Thrones. He trained Arya as the Faceless Man. He's great here, too, as another foil, this time for Hopper. I like the conversation, with like referencing American movies, calling Hopper Steve McQueen, and what are his odds to escape. And I thought then he was humanized really nicely by talk of his own son and that he has to get out of there so his son doesn't think he's a traitor. I'm like, I don't think Russia's going to let this go. You're going to have to leave the country with your family if they're willing to go. Number 17, Erica, played by Priah Ferguson. Great surprise when she was invited to Dungeons & Dragons. I didn't know who Dustin had in mind, and that was a really great reveal. And she was wonderful in that sequence when she won the day for them. I thought, Priah Ferguson does a great job of being edgy and aggressive without being, putting off the audience. I think she's a really good, talented actress. But again, there isn't much for her to do overall this season. I was glad that she kind of joined in with the mystery when they were helping them get trapped out of the Upside Down. But I was surprised in the middle of the season that she ratted out Lucas and his friends to the parents and the police rather than pulling them aside and saying what's going on. When she said, they're lying, I was like, whoa, snitches get stitches, Erica. Now, I would think you would know that, Erica, as someone who I think has made those kind of threats in season 3. All right, number 18, her brother, Lucas, played, of course, by Caleb McLaughlin. I loved the choice of making him one of the popular kids, especially at the beginning of this season. And I love the big game. And again, I think they should have moved the Dungeons & Dragons game because you can't really move a game because another school has to come to show up for it. It's just, I felt bad they didn't move it. I would have moved it. And that nobody showed up to cheer him on. Not even his parents or his sister who was at that D&D game. He won. And there was nobody there. I was like, I'm glad Lucas is cool with it or else Vecna would be targeting him. But then the popular kids all turned evil and Lucas had to turn on them. He did a great job with it, but it kind of ground his storyline to a halt. And now it's switched to whether or not he and Max are going to get back together. And I'm not really feeling the chemistry. I don't know if the show doesn't want to lean into it too much because they're such younger characters, but they're both getting pretty big now, and I think they could do a better job with this. I hope to see it handled better in the second part. Then number 19, Sam Owens, played by Paul Reiser. Always great to see Paul Reiser. I thought the helicopter stuff landing at his house was fantastic. He's like Mr. Explain at that diner. He's like, let me tell you what's going on. And I like the reveal of the lab in Nevada, where you're very much like, clearly you've changed to a set, but I don't care. This is fun. But then after all that, he had nothing to do but stand next to Brenner and be like, this is not working. I don't agree to this, Brenner. And then Brenner's like, I don't care. So I think Paul Reiser might be a candidate to not make it out of this season alive. And then here's some shocking people to have at the end. Number 20, Mike, played by Finn Wolfhard. Biggest physical change, by the way, from season 1, which I think is always very striking every time we see him. But I don't think he's a great boyfriend for 11. I thought the From Mike stuff, to even write From Mike, I guess I could kind of understand it, but I don't know. It makes me feel like I don't know if their relationship has a future. But overall, though, he's sidelined without 11 without interacting with her character and without Will missing. So it's just crazy to see how much his character has less to do compared to earlier on in the show. And right after that, Will, number 21, played by Noah Schnapp. Also a big physical change from season 1. I think obviously he has a crush on Mike and that painting is for Mike. I wish we had seen what it was, which I think would maybe, because they dropped it after the first few episodes. And again, I don't understand. Sometimes you can't help who you love, but Mike's never given him any indication that he likes him, and Mike's dating his other good friend, 11. So I don't know why Will doesn't seem more conflicted about causing that kind of potential problem for his friends and himself. The character really has nothing to do right now. And it's not great that he's defined by his sexuality. I think the best characters are multifaceted. And like Robin, of course, the LGBT aspect is a big part of her storyline, but she has a lot of other things going on too. And so I wish that Will also had other things. Like whatever happened to his Upside Down connection? He was always kind of a passive character. The Upside Down worked, the Mind Flayer worked through him last season. So maybe that's part of the problem. But I wish they had more to do with him. And then last, 22, Jonathan, played by Charlie Heaton. What happened to this character? I don't even recognize this character. He's got nothing to do. I mean, when he's not teaming up with Nancy or looking for his brother Will, but I don't understand why he seems to have totally not, decided he doesn't want to be with Nancy. I mean, they seemed so in love before, and they were really connecting last season, literally and metaphorically. I just don't understand why he just suddenly lost all interest in her and doesn't want to keep going with her. I didn't see anything about him feeling suffocated, and it's not like he wants to have his own personality, because I don't see him having any of his own interests. So maybe he's just getting cold feet, but they don't have the room to explore it. So Mike, Will, and Jonathan, boy, wow, really benched. That's too bad. All right, so that's my Stranger Things 4 Part 1 character ranking. Very curious to hear your rankings down below. Share your thoughts about my rankings. Subscribe today. And of course, as always, you can check out some more videos right now.